peaceful life begins with letting go. Have you ever sat alone at twilight, when the sun is barely holding onto the sky, and asked yourself quietly, what am I still carrying? Not in your hands, but in your heart. If you're between 50 and 80, I invite you to stay with me today not as a student, but as someone who already holds a lifetime of wisdom. This is not a lecture. This is a conversation from one soul to another. Because the truth is growing older isn't just about watching the years pass. It's about learning the quiet art of release. And no one ever teaches us how to do that. They tell us how to achieve, how to accumulate, how to build, but almost no one tells us that the secret to peace in later life is subtraction. To subtract what no longer serves you. To subtract what weighs down your spirit. To subtract what stands between you and peace. Today, we'll explore 7 quiet messages. Not rules. Not commandments. Just gentle truths that may help you breathe more deeply, love more openly, and live more fully in this final, golden chapter of life. If this resonates with you, I gently ask you to subscribe to our channel and stay until the end. Because sometimes, the most important lessons come not at the beginning of life but in the letting go at the end. Let's begin. 1. Let go of the hunger for wealth and status. When we are young, we chase things. A better job. A bigger house. A newer car. We build, we save, we stretch. And to a degree, this drive gives us a sense of identity and pride. But as we age, that same hunger can quietly turn into a burden. I've seen this countless times in my years of working with older adults. People who have enough but who still don't feel satisfied. They walk through their homes full of things and still feel empty. They dine at fine restaurants, but the taste of joy is missing. They look at their bank accounts, but their hearts feel poor. Because here's the quiet truth. The older you get, the less wealth matters and the more your health, your relationships, and your peace of mind take center stage. In Western psychology, there is a term called hedonic adaptation. It means that no matter how much pleasure or luxury you experience, your brain will soon return to a baseline level of contentment. That new car, you'll get used to it. That big house, it will become ordinary. That exotic vacation, soon just a memory. But what you never get used to, what continues to bring meaning, is connection, stillness, gratitude. And ironically, the more you chase wealth in old age, the more likely you are to miss these simple gifts. Let me tell you about a man I once counseled. His name was Walter. Walter had worked his whole life in the oil industry, retired comfortably with a large pension, multiple properties, and grown children. On paper, Walter had it all. But in conversation, he would often ask, "Do you think I should invest in another apartment building?" I would gently ask, "Do you want to manage another building at this stage of life?" He'd pause, then say, "I'm not sure. I just feel like I should be doing something more." Walter was 76. He wasn't looking for more money. He was looking for purpose. But he had spent so many decades equating financial success with self-worth that he didn't know how to feel valuable without chasing something. One day, after many talks, I gave him a small journal and asked him to write down 3 things each day that brought him peace. At first, it was awkward. But slowly, his lists began to change. One day he wrote, "Morning sun through the window. Coffee with my daughter. Hearing my wife laugh at the dog." And then he looked at me and said, "You know, these cost nothing, but they feel like everything." Walter stopped buying buildings. He started planting vegetables in his backyard. He began teaching English to refugee children at a local center. And most of all, he looked lighter. Because he had begun to let go of the belief that more equals better. He had started to subtract. Now, I'm not telling you that money doesn't matter. Of course, financial stability brings comfort and options. But beyond a certain point, more money does not bring more happiness. What brings joy is contentment. And contentment begins with letting go of the craving. There's an old European proverb that says, "A man with 1 loaf and peace in his heart is richer than the man with 10 loaves and no appetite." If you're listening to this and feeling the tension of not enough, I invite you to pause and ask yourself gently, what am I truly missing? Is it money? Or is it meaning? Because here's what most people discover too late. You don't need more to feel enough. You need to see what you already have, in a new light. So today, my first message to you is simple. Let go of the hunger for status, wealth, and more. You've already run that race. You've already proven your worth. Now is the time to be. to be present, to be grateful, to be at peace. Look around your life at the sun on the porch, the quiet hum of the fan, the warm tea in your hand, the voice of someone who still calls you mom, dad, grandpa, or friend. These are not luxuries. These are treasures. And the heart that can see them as such is the wealthiest of all. 2. Let go of resentment to heal your heart. There is a particular weight that no doctor can detect. It won't show up on an X-ray or a blood test, but it can drain the life out of even the healthiest body. That weight is resentment. As we grow older, we carry many things: memories, stories, joys, losses. But perhaps nothing clings more stubbornly to the heart than the feeling of being wronged. You may recognize it as a quiet bitterness when someone's name is mentioned, or as a cold silence when your child forgets to call, or even as a flare of anger when you recall how a sibling, a friend, or a spouse betrayed your trust decades ago. And here's the truth: no one likes to admit resentment does not punish the person who hurt you. It punishes you. In my years as a counselor for aging adults, I've seen how resentment weaves its way into conversation like a vine. I've spoken with seniors who haven't spoken to their brother in 30 years over a small inheritance. I've met mothers who silently punish their children for past disappointments. I've listened to husbands and wives who sleep side by side, but are miles apart, both waiting for the other to apologize first. And in every case, the wound isn't just emotional. It's physical. It shows up in sleepless nights, in tension headaches, in loneliness that refuses to leave, no matter how full the room is. Science agrees. Studies in geriatric psychology show that chronic resentment can increase the risk of depression, cardiovascular disease, and even weaken the immune system. Simply put, holding a grudge hurts your body as much as your spirit. But there's good news. Resentment is not a life sentence. It is a choice. And you have the power to release it. Let me tell you a story, one I will never forget. Her name was Margaret, a retired schoolteacher in her early 70s. When she first came to me, she seemed composed and intelligent. But as we talked more, it became clear that she was holding something deep. Her daughter had divorced young, and Margaret, out of love, had stepped in to help raise the grandchildren. She sacrificed many of her retirement dreams: travel, art classes, even her savings to support her daughter's family. But years later, when the daughter remarried and moved to another state, she grew distant. Calls became fewer. Visits almost vanished. She used me, Margaret said, her lips pressed tight. She took everything and left me alone. I asked, "Have you told her how you feel?" "She knows," Margaret replied. "She just doesn't care." Week after week, we peeled back the layers. Margaret didn't just feel used. She felt invisible, forgotten. And underneath her anger was a deep well of sadness. One day, I handed Margaret a small stone. I said, "Carry this in your purse for a week. Every time you feel that resentment rise, hold the stone. Let it remind you of the weight you're choosing to carry." A week later, she returned and dropped the stone on my table. "It's heavier than I thought," she said. We both knew she wasn't talking about the stone. I encouraged Margaret to write a letter to her daughter. Not to send, but just to write. A letter that said everything she needed to say. Her pain, her love, her disappointment, and her desire for healing. It took 3 weeks, but she did it. And when she read it aloud, we both cried. Then, something changed. Margaret didn't send the letter. But she did call her daughter for the first time in months and simply said, "I miss you." That call opened the door. Slowly, the visits resumed. The relationship didn't return to what it had been, but it no longer sat like a wound. Because Margaret had taken the first step toward release. You see, forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. And it is not approval of bad behavior. Forgiveness is simply deciding that the past will not own your future. It's looking at the wound, acknowledging the pain, and saying, "I'm done carrying this." One of the most powerful lessons from modern neuroscience is that the brain continues to rewire itself, even in old age. This means that healing is not a young person's privilege, it's a lifelong opportunity. You have not missed your chance. If you are holding on to resentment today, ask yourself gently, what is this pain costing me? What am I not experiencing peace, love, joy because my hands are full of anger? The poet and Lamotte once wrote, "Not forgiving is like drinking rat poison and then waiting for the rat to die." Resentment doesn't punish them. It punishes you. And yet, I understand how hard it is. Some wounds are deep. Some betrayals shake the soul. But you don't have to do it all at once. Start small. Start with a prayer, a journal entry, a walk in nature where you name the wound, and just ask for the strength to one day let it go. Let your healing be as gentle as you need it to be. And know this, forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. It doesn't always mean inviting the person back into your life. It means releasing their power over your emotions. It means reclaiming your own peace. I once heard a spiritual teacher say, "You can forgive someone and never have lunch with them again." That is freedom. In traditional aging models, we talk about life review, a stage where older adults naturally begin to reflect on their lives. What they've done. What they regret. What they are proud of. During this stage, forgiveness often becomes urgent. Not because time is running out, but because the soul longs to be light for whatever time remains. So today, I ask you, whom have you not forgiven? Is it someone else or is it yourself? Because sometimes, the deepest resentment is not toward others. It's toward the decisions we made. The people we didn't become. The mistakes we still replay in the quiet of night. You are human. You did the best you could with what you knew then. You deserve peace. You deserve rest. So offer yourself the same compassion you would give to a beloved friend. Speak to yourself kindly. Tell your past self, "I forgive you." Let go of resentment. Not because they deserve it, but because you do. You deserve to wake up without a clenched chest. To sit in silence without voices from the past shouting at you. To grow old with grace, not with grudges. Because at the end of your days, you will not regret the kindness you gave. You will only regret the peace you denied yourself for too long. And peace, dear friend, begins with forgiveness. 3. Let go of complaints and rediscover the quiet joys of everyday life. There's a moment in many people's later years when the world begins to feel disappointing. Your body doesn't move like it used to. Your children are busier than they used to be. Friends pass away. Familiar places change. Even your own reflection in the mirror becomes harder to recognize. It's so easy to let bitterness creep in. You sigh when your knees ache getting out of bed. You grumble when the neighbor's dog won't stop barking. You curse the price of groceries or the state of the world. You feel invisible when the young cashier doesn't look you in the eye. And without meaning to, you begin to narrate your life in complaints. But here's the difficult truth. Complaints don't change the world. They only change your spirit. I don't say this with judgment. I say it with love. Because I've walked beside people in their 70s, 80s, even 90s who've spent decades complaining, and others who faced equal hardship with surprising peace. And the difference wasn't luck. It was perspective. Let me tell you about an older gentleman I worked with named Carl. Carl was 82. He lived alone in a small apartment, walked with a cane, and had moderate arthritis. His son lived in another state and didn't visit often. On paper, Carl's life looked modest, even lonely. But every time I visited, Carl would greet me at the door with the same sentence. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Even if it was raining. Even if it was cold. Even if he'd had a bad night's sleep. I asked him once, "Carl, don't you ever have days where you just want to complain?" He smiled and said, "Of course I do. But complaining is like leaving your windows open during a storm. It invites the misery in and pretty soon, everything inside you gets soaked." That image stayed with me. Carl didn't deny his struggles, but he refused to let them shape his attitude. Instead, he found joy in simple things. The warmth of sunlight through the curtains. The smell of toast in the morning. A letter from an old friend. Even the feeling of a soft blanket around his shoulders. Carl had trained his mind through discipline and intention to find the good. Not because his life was perfect, but because he knew this. You cannot complain your way to joy. Modern psychology calls this the negativity bias, the brain's tendency to focus on what's wrong instead of what's right. It's a survival mechanism left over from evolution. But if we are not careful, it becomes a lens through which we see our entire life. And the older we get, the more tempting it becomes. Why? Because aging, by its nature, involves loss. Loss of youth. Loss of loved ones. Loss of independence. But there is a powerful secret here, and I want you to hear this clearly. Loss does not mean life is less valuable. It means the remaining moments are more precious. The man who has $50 in his pocket may guard it more carefully than the one with $5,000. And the person who has fewer days ahead may choose to live more fully in each one. But complaints steal that fullness. They shrink your world. They turn conversation into bitterness. They turn silence into restlessness. They turn the morning breeze into something too chilly, and the summer heat into something unbearable. And over time, complaints turn people away. No one wants to be around someone who sees the worst in everything. No one enjoys talking to a person who always has something negative to say. I say this not to shame but to awaken. Because you deserve joy. You deserve connection. And both of those require a conscious shift away from complaint and toward gratitude. Let me tell you about a practice I've given to many of my older clients. I call it the Joy Journal. Each night, before bed, write down 3 moments from your day that brought you a flicker of peace or joy. They don't have to be dramatic. In fact, the smaller, the better. For example, I heard a bird singing outside my window. I made myself a cup of tea and drank it slowly. My neighbor smiled at me today. I remembered a funny story from my childhood. At first, some people resist this exercise. There's nothing joyful about my life, they say. But after a week, something softens. They start noticing more. Because what we focus on grows. Focus on what's missing, and the emptiness expands. Focus on what's present, and contentment begins to bloom. I remember one woman named Lorraine. She was 79, widowed, with limited mobility. She often told me, there's nothing to look forward to anymore. But after a few weeks of joy journaling, her entries began to change. She wrote, "Watched the leaves dance in the wind today. Saw a young father holding his baby at the store. Reminded me of when mine were small. Lit a candle tonight and prayed. Felt peaceful." Lorraine didn't win the lottery. She didn't regain her youth. But she found beauty in places she'd stopped looking. Because she chose to stop narrating her life through complaint and started listening for quiet grace. And here's something else. People who let go of complaints often find that others draw closer. Children call more often. Neighbors linger longer in conversation. Even strangers feel a warmth that makes them want to engage. Because joy, especially in older adults, is magnetic. It's the glow that says, I've lived through pain, but I haven't let it steal my wonder. Now, let me be clear. Letting go of complaints doesn't mean pretending everything is perfect. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to mourn. It's okay to acknowledge the difficulties of aging. But don't let hardship become your identity. You are not your arthritis. You are not your losses. You are not your loneliness. You are a whole, radiant soul still capable of love, of laughter, of discovery. And the more you speak of what is good, the more good you will find. So if you find yourself stuck in the cycle of complaining, I invite you to pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, is this complaint helping me? Or is it stealing a moment I could have spent in peace? What else could I notice right now? Maybe the softness of your blanket, the hum of the refrigerator, the photo of a loved one on your wall, the fact that you are breathing, alive, still here. Even that is something to be thankful for, because no matter your age, your circumstances, or your past, you still have a choice. You can choose to see what's missing, or you can choose to see what's left. And what's left may be more beautiful than you realize. So my third message to you is simple, but powerful. Let go of constant complaints. They are not your companions. They are not your protection. They are thieves dressed in the language of habit. And in their place, invite stillness. Invite wonder. Invite the kind of joy that is not loud, but deep. The joy of a soft morning light. The joy of a kind word. The joy of simply being, and knowing that is enough. Because the most beautiful days are not always the ones with fireworks. They are the quiet ones. The ones you almost didn't notice. But now, you will. 4. Let go of the past and reclaim the gift of now. There's a phrase I've heard many times in my work with older adults. It's often whispered with a wistful smile, or muttered in moments of quiet regret. If only I could go back. If only I had taken that opportunity. If only I had said something different. If only I had chosen another path. If only I hadn't made that mistake. And perhaps you, too, have found yourself walking down the corridors of memory, revisiting doors that can no longer be opened. The past has a strange power. It can comfort us. It can haunt us. It can define us, if we let it. But here is the quiet truth that many people never hear in time. You are not your past, and you do not have to live there anymore. There is a deep wisdom that only comes with age, the wisdom of hindsight. It's the ability to see things clearly, now that the dust has settled and the consequences have played out. But if we are not careful, that wisdom can twist into torment. I once sat with a man named Harold, who was 85. He had lived a full life, married for over 50 years, 3 children, a long career as a carpenter. But every time we spoke, he would return to one story. When he was in his 30s, he turned down a job offer in another state. It was a well-paying position, a big step forward. But he chose to stay close to home for family reasons. I wonder what my life would have been like if I'd taken that job, he told me, again and again. We could have had more money, more travel, maybe even a better life. At first, I nodded. Regret is normal. But after months, it became clear this one decision, made decades ago, had become the lens through which Harold viewed his entire life. He had allowed one moment from the past to steal decades of joy from the present. So one day, I asked him a question. What if the life you lived, the one with your wife, your children, your morning coffee, your Sunday walks, that life wasn't second best? What if it was exactly the one you were meant to live? He looked at me and said nothing for a long time. Then, with tears in his eyes, he whispered, I never thought of it that way. Harold had spent over 40 years grieving a version of life that never happened. And in doing so, he almost missed the beauty of the life he did live. How many of us do the same? We replay old arguments. We revisit old wounds. We rehearse better versions of our choices. But the past is not a place we can go to make edits. It is a place we visit only to learn, and then let go. The great philosopher Carl Jung once said, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. And that choice, who we choose to become, can only be made in the present moment. Modern neuroscience backs this up. Research shows that ruminating on the past activates the same emotional circuits as actual trauma. In other words, your brain and body experience old pain as if it's happening now unless you consciously choose to release it. That release is not a betrayal of your past. It's a declaration that your life is still unfolding. Now, I understand. Some past wounds are not just missed opportunities. They are real betrayals. Abuse. Abandonment. Loss. These are not memories we can simply brush aside. They demand respect. They demand healing. But healing is not the same as rehearsing. Healing means we acknowledge the pain, then loosen its grip on our present. Let me share another story. Her name was Evelyn. She was 74 when I met her, a retired librarian with a soft voice and a quiet sadness. She had lost her only son in a car accident over 20 years earlier. Since then, she had lived in a sort of suspended grief. She didn't decorate for holidays. She didn't attend family gatherings. She refused to get rid of his belongings. He was my world, she said. And when he died, I did too. But Evelyn was still breathing, still waking up, still living. And so I gently asked her, if he were here, truly here, what would he want for you? She paused. Then she whispered, he'd want me to be happy. So I asked her to do one thing. Just one. Light a candle. Not for mourning, but for presence. To light it each morning and say, I am still here, and I choose to live. She did it. At first, she lit the candle and cried. But eventually, she lit it and smiled. She began going to the library again. She joined a book club. She even started writing short stories. The grief never disappeared. But it no longer defined her. Because Evelyn chose to carry her son's love, not just her loss. And that choice made all the difference. Maybe you're carrying something too. A mistake you made. A hurt you caused. A version of yourself you no longer recognize. A person you lost. Let me say this clearly. You can honor the past without living in it. You can remember with love, not with pain. You can be a keeper of memory and still live a vibrant present. And if you've made mistakes, welcome to the human race. Every person you admire has made decisions they regret. What separates peace from torment is the choice to learn and to release. You don't have to drag your past like a heavy suitcase through every day. You can put it down. You can say, yes, that happened. And now, I choose to live differently. This is the gift of now. Now is where change happens. Now is where peace lives. Now is where love begins again. And here's something beautiful. When you begin to live fully in the present, your past begins to soften. You remember not just the pain, but the laughter. Not just the failures, but the courage it took to try. Not just the loss, but the love that made it hurt. You start to see your past not as a prison but as a path. One that led you to here. So today, I offer this fourth message to you with deep love and respect. Let go of the past. Not because it didn't matter, but because it mattered deeply. And now, it is complete. Your story is not finished. Your chapters are still being written. And the most beautiful line may be the one you write today. Take a deep breath. Look around you. This moment is yours. Not yesterday. Not tomorrow. Right now. And right now, you are free. 5. Let go of the need to control time and surrender to its gentle flow. There is something deeply humbling about watching time pass. The way a season changes without asking permission. The way the body softens and slows, no matter how fiercely we resist. The way children grow up and grow distant, carving their own path through a world that no longer resembles the one we knew. If you've lived more than half a century, you know this. Time doesn't ask. It moves. It doesn't wait for us to be ready. It doesn't pause when we beg it to slow down. It flows quietly, steadily, faithfully, whether we rise with grace or fight with clenched fists. And yet, so many of us reach our later years with one quiet desire pulsing beneath the surface. We want time to return, or to stop, or to bend to our will. We hold on to the past. We try to control the future. We measure ourselves against the ticking of clocks and the shadows of calendars. And slowly, gently, time becomes our enemy, not our companion. But it doesn't have to be that way. I want to share a story with you. Her name was Della, and she was 78 when I met her. She was the kind of woman who moved quickly, even when she didn't need to. She made lists, followed schedules, and bristled when things didn't go according to plan. She was sharp, capable, organized, but also restless. During one of our conversations, she confessed something. "I'm scared," she said. "Not of dying, but of becoming irrelevant." Her eyes welled up with tears. "I used to be needed. Every minute of my day had a purpose. But now, the house is quiet. My phone is silent. My calendar is blank." And then she asked me something I've never forgotten. What do I do with all this time? It was a beautiful question. A brave question. Because beneath it was a truth many older adults face. When the roles fade, the parent, the worker, the caretaker, what remains? Who are you, without the clock dictating your value? I looked at Della and said gently, "You become the keeper of stillness. The one who teaches the rest of us how to slow down. How to listen. How to savor. Because here's what I've learned. Aging is not a loss of usefulness. It's a shift in rhythm. You are no longer required to move at the world's pace. You are invited to move at the pace of meaning. And that begins by letting go of the illusion that you must control time. You see, when we try to manage time too tightly, we miss what's happening inside it. We rush through meals. We interrupt moments. We live from one task to the next and call it productivity. But there is a sacredness in slowness. In pausing to sip tea instead of gulping coffee. In watching the way light falls across a table. In noticing the breath in your body steady, present, alive. One of the most respected studies on aging, the Harvard study of adult development, has shown that those who age with the most contentment are not those with the longest resumes or the busiest schedules. They are the ones who learn to accept what they cannot control and cherish what they can. And time is one of those things we must accept. You can't go back and change the year your child left home. You can't undo the grey in your hair or the lines around your eyes. You can't rewind to when things made more sense. But you can sit here, now, and be fully present for the beauty that still remains. You can befriend time. You can stop counting the minutes and start making the minutes count. Let me return to Della for a moment. After our conversation, she began doing something new. Every morning, she would sit on her porch for 10 minutes. No phone. No book. No to-do list. Just the sound of wind in the trees and the birds announcing the day. At first, she said, I felt useless. Like I should be doing something. But over time, her language changed. Now she says, I feel like I'm finally doing what matters. I'm learning how to simply be. And that, my friend, is no small thing. Because we live in a world that worships speed and output. And the elderly are often cast aside as unproductive or behind the times. But what if your greatest gift to the world is your presence? What if the way you sit with a grandchild with patience and attention is more valuable than 1,000 texts? What if your ability to reflect, to forgive, to see the long view of life is exactly what this busy, overwhelmed world needs? That's not irrelevance. That's wisdom. And wisdom, by its nature, requires time. So don't be ashamed of slowing down. Let your pace become your prayer. Let your silence become your strength. Let your stillness become your offering. And if your children don't visit as often, if your name is no longer on a company directory, if your hands are not as quick or your voice not as strong, that does not mean your time has passed. It means your time has changed. Now is your time for reflection. Now is your time for legacy. Now is your time to savor the fruits of the life you've planted. You do not need to prove your worth through business. You already earned your place in this world. Now is the time to enjoy it. Let go of the urgency. Let go of the schedule. Let go of the idea that your minutes only matter if they are filled with tasks. And instead, fill your time with intention. Call someone you've been meaning to. Write a letter, even if you never send it. Take a slow walk with no destination. Listen to music from your youth. Or sit by the window and simply notice how the sky changes. This is not wasting time. This is redeeming it. Because time, real time, is not measured by clocks. It's measured by presence, by peace, by moments that touch the soul and linger quietly in the heart. So today, I offer you this fifth message. Let go of the need to control time. Let it flow. Let it soften you. Let it teach you. And as it carries you forward, meet it not with fear, but with trust. Trust that who you are becoming is still beautiful. Trust that what lies ahead may surprise you. Trust that you are not running out of time. You are arriving at the richness of it. 6. Let go of the need to be right and embrace the power of connection. There's a quiet battle that many people fight in the later years of life. It doesn't show up in arguments, but in the silence that follows. It doesn't cause bruises, but it leaves cracks in the heart. It's not between nations or armies, but between people who once loved each other and no longer speak. That battle is the need to be right. And the older we get, the more certain we become. We believe we've lived long enough to know what's true. We believe our way is the better way. We believe that being right justifies the pain it causes. But here's a gentle truth that I hope finds its way into your heart today. You can be right, or you can be at peace. But sometimes, you cannot be both. Let that settle. Because for many of us, the desire to be right has cost us something far more precious than pride. It's cost us connection. Let me tell you about a man named Albert. He was 81 when we met, sharp, opinionated, and deeply proud of the life he'd built. But behind his stern expression was a loneliness that couldn't be hidden. He hadn't spoken to his daughter in 6 years. The reason? A disagreement over how she was raising her son. I told her exactly what I thought, he said. And if she can't handle the truth, that's on her. I asked, do you miss her? He looked down. His voice cracked. Every day. You see, Albert wasn't a bad father. He loved his daughter deeply. But he loved being right more. And that need to have the final word, to prove his point, had built a wall that 6 years of silence could not tear down. We spent many weeks talking. Not about blame, but about longing. He began to see that being right hadn't brought him peace. It had brought him distance. Regret. Empty holidays. Photos he wasn't in. Eventually, he wrote her a letter. Not to defend himself. Not to explain. But simply to say, I miss you. I was harsh. I want us back. She called a week later. The first thing she said was, I've been waiting for this for years. They cried. They healed. And though the past couldn't be erased, their future was no longer defined by silence. So I ask you, gently, is there someone in your life with whom you are holding a grudge not because they're dangerous or cruel but because you disagreed? Is your pride standing in the way of a connection your heart still longs for? I know. Sometimes you really were right. They said something wrong. They misunderstood. They never apologized. But ask yourself what matters more now, winning or mending. Because in the end, your tombstone will not say, "They were always right," but your legacy may say, "They loved well." There's a quote I often share with those in their later years. It comes from Rumi, the poet. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right-doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. That field is called connection, and it is more nourishing than any argument you'll ever win. Now, this doesn't mean you must accept mistreatment. It doesn't mean you must agree with everything or tolerate disrespect, but it means you choose to value relationship over ego. It means you soften where you used to stiffen. It means you say, "I may not agree with you, but I still want you in my life." There is a deep strength in that kind of humility, because only the truly wise know when to stop talking and start listening. In family systems theory, there is something called differentiation. It means that mature individuals can stay connected even when they disagree. They don't have to cut each other off just because their views clash. They can say, "You're you. I'm me. Let's love each other anyway." Imagine what would change in your life if you adopted that posture. Imagine the arguments that would never need to happen. The holidays that would be warm again. The grandchildren you might see more often. The ache in your chest that might ease. I once met a woman named Sarah who had stopped speaking to her sister over an inheritance dispute. 20 years passed. Both women married, had children, went through heartbreaks, and grieved their parents' deaths separately. When Sarah's sister became ill, she sent a short note. "I don't remember what we were fighting about. I just know I don't want to leave this earth without hearing your voice again." Sarah flew across the country the next day. They held hands in the hospital. They cried. They laughed. They shared photos. They didn't try to fix the past. They simply held what was left. And it was enough. Because connection is not about erasing conflict. It's about saying, "This matters more than my ego." I wonder, what would shift inside you if you stopped needing to be right? If you chose to let someone else have the final word, and gave yourself the final piece? In our culture, we often equate strength with dominance. But real strength, especially in later life, is found in softness. It's in the grandparent who listens without correcting. It's in the parent who says, "I'm sorry," to their adult child. It's in the spouse who chooses harmony over being correct. Letting go of the need to be right is not a loss of intelligence. It's the highest form of wisdom. Because what does it really mean to be right, if no one is left to share it with? So here is my 6th message to you. Let go of the need to be right. Open your hands. Reach for someone who matters. Make the first move. Say the first soft word. And even if they don't respond, even if nothing changes outside of you, something will shift inside. You will feel lighter, wider, more at peace. Because when you trade being right for being kind, you don't lose anything. You gain everything. You gain closeness. You gain freedom. You gain the gentle satisfaction of knowing you chose love over pride. And that, my dear friend, is the real victory. 7. Let go of the idea that you're no longer needed and step into your quiet power. There comes a moment in almost every aging journey when a quiet question surfaces, one that few dare to say out loud. Am I still needed? It can creep in after retirement, after the children move away, after a spouse passes, or even on an ordinary Tuesday when the phone doesn't ring and no one asks for your opinion. It's a hollow feeling. Not quite pain, not quite fear, but something heavier, something lonelier. And in a culture that often glorifies youth, productivity, and speed, it's easy for older adults to begin feeling like they've somehow expired. Like their relevance has an end date. Like their value is tied to what they can still do, rather than who they are. But I want to say this as clearly, and as lovingly, as I can. You are not invisible. You are not finished. You are not unnecessary. The truth is, your presence, your quiet, weathered, richly lived presence might be the very thing someone else needs to breathe easier, live deeper, or find their way home. Let me tell you a story. Her name was Mabel. She was 86 when I first met her. Her husband had passed. Her children lived in other states. Her eyesight was failing. She used a walker and spent most days inside. And one day, during our session, she said softly, "I don't think I matter to anyone anymore." I looked at her, stunned. Because Mabel, in her quiet way, had taught me more about dignity, patience, and resilience than any book ever could. But to her, It didn't count. No one calls me for advice, she said. No one needs me to cook, or babysit, or help with anything. Then I asked, Mabel, do you remember that young woman who brings your groceries? The one you always ask about her daughter? Mabel nodded. Of course. She's kind. She told me last week that you're the only customer who ever remembers her birthday. That she looks forward to your chats because they remind her of her grandmother, who passed. And that your stories help her feel less alone in the world. Mabel's eyes filled with tears. She had no idea. You see, the power of older adults isn't always in what they do, but how they are. Their listening. Their steadiness. Their memory of how things used to be. Their willingness to sit in silence without needing to fill it. These are quiet powers. And we forget how much the world needs them. You may not be the head of a household anymore. You may not drive a car, or balance a company budget, or host Sunday dinners for 20. But your influence is not over. It is simply changing form. You are the keeper of stories. The living bridge between generations. The proof that we can survive heartbreak, rebuild after loss, laugh again after grief. And whether you realize it or not, someone is watching you. A grandchild. A neighbor. A caregiver. They're watching how you carry yourself in this final chapter. And in you, they're learning what it means to grow old with grace. Never underestimate the power of presence. There's a reason so many people long for their grandparents when life feels hard. It's not because of what their grandparents did, it's because of how they were. They were calm, grounded, wise, kind. And perhaps, without realizing it, that's who you've become. There's a term in developmental psychology called generativity. It refers to the stage of life usually beginning in midlife and continuing through old age where we find meaning by guiding the next generation. But guidance doesn't always mean giving speeches. It can mean sharing a meal, telling a story, passing down a recipe, smiling at a stranger, listening to your adult child without trying to fix their problems, sending a handwritten letter. The most powerful influence is rarely loud. It's a quiet ripple. And ripples change lives. I once knew a man named Elias. He lived in an assisted living home, had no surviving family, and spent most days reading. One of the younger aides, a man in his 20s, often helped Elias get ready for bed. They rarely spoke much. But on Elias's last day, that young man wept. He said, Mr. Elias never said much, but when he looked at me, it felt like he saw something good in me. And that helped me believe it, too. Elias never gave a lecture. He never offered advice. He simply saw someone, and that was enough. Maybe that's your power too. To be the one who sees. The one who remembers. The one who holds space, while the world keeps rushing by. And yes, you may not get thanked for it. You may not get acknowledged. But that does not mean you're not making a difference. Your value does not diminish with age. It deepens. And sometimes, the deepest wells are the ones hardest to see until we need them. So today, I offer this final message with reverence and love. Let go of the idea that you are no longer needed. You are needed. In ways big and small. In ways seen and unseen. In hearts you've touched. In lives you've shaped. In the echoes of kindness you left behind. You are the elder. The witness. The one who knows. And if you've been feeling forgotten, let this be your reminder. You are not forgotten. You are not invisible. You are not irrelevant. You are a blessing still unfolding, a story still being told, a light that still shines quietly, but powerfully in a world that desperately needs more of your kind of light. So walk with your head high, speak with tenderness, give freely of your wisdom, and know this: you are still becoming, and who you are now might be your most important self yet. Final reflection, a quiet return to yourself. If you've made it this far, thank you. Not just for watching, but for opening your heart to these messages, these quiet truths that were never meant to change the world outside, but the world within. You've walked with me through 7 invitations. To let go of the hunger for wealth. To forgive what once felt unforgivable. To release the habit of complaining. To make peace with the past. To surrender the illusion of controlling time. To choose connection over being right. And finally, to remember, you are still needed. These are not easy things. They take courage. They take tenderness. And they take a kind of wisdom that only a life fully lived can hold. But I believe in you. Because if there's one thing I've learned from walking beside thousands of older adults, it's this. The final chapters of life are not a slow fading away. They are a return. A return to what matters. A return to who you've always been beneath the noise. A return to the heart. And when you live from that place, something beautiful happens. You stop grasping. You stop defending. You stop rushing. And in the stillness, you begin to feel something soft, but undeniable. Peace. Not because life is perfect, but because you've made peace with the imperfect. Not because the world stopped changing, but because you stopped needing it to. So I ask you now before you go, take one message from today. Just one. And live it this week. Maybe it's a phone call you've been putting off. Maybe it's a letter you need to write. Maybe it's a walk in the evening light, with no destination except your breath and your presence. Then come back. Leave a comment. Tell us what you're letting go of. Tell us what you're rediscovering. Your words might be the reminder someone else needs. If this video touched you, I invite you to share it with a friend, a sibling, someone who may be walking a quiet road of their own. And if you'd like more gentle wisdom like this, please subscribe to the channel. We'll be here, walking with you, one story at a time. Because your journey still matters. Because your presence still blesses this world. Because you are still becoming. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And until we meet again, may you live with lightness, love, and the quiet knowing that your best self is never behind you, it's always waiting just ahead. Wishing you peace, grace, and every good thing this day and the next.